Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And today we're joined by the fantastic Gabriel Chavarria, who is currently starring in the Netflix series Selena. And one of the things that I really love about the series is the way that it goes through the perspective of the family lens, and was interested in how you really all worked together, not just even in terms of the individual dynamics, but thinking about who he is within this group of his family as a whole, because different family members bring out different sides of him, but then there's also the version of who he is when they're in that group dynamic, when they're sitting around the table together having dinner, when they're on the bus together, and who he would be in those places.
Yeah, the cool thing about the show, Selena, it's the family dynamic. That's the most
Mm-hmm.
important thing, and that's like the key, the main theme of the show. And you know, that's one of the things that I really gravitated towards most when I was reading the scripts was that relationship between all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know Selena, we know the legend, we know the
Mm-hmm.
icon, we know the superstar. Um, and I mean, it was really interesting starting to learn that AB, for example,
Mm-hmm.
was he wrote her hit songs, and
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue about that. So once I started reading that, it was just so intriguing to me. And then how Abraham would push them and motivate them and challenge them. Um, and ultimately they always came together. They always came together and they had each other's backs, and that is why they had so much success.
Yeah. And I love the fact that the entire family was very self-taught within the music industry. And you really capture the different stages of him learning the industry and the confidence that he really gains in. He becomes incredibly self-assured of his skills and of his own talent as a songwriter, as a musician, as a producer, as the series goes on. So what was your journey like in terms of just like researching and really understanding the elements of the music industry that he would have had to gradually learn so that you could play out that journey?
It was pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of stuff out there about AB.
Mm-hmm.
So and unfortunately we didn't get a chance to meet beforehand, but our production, they put together a great you know information package about everybody and the entire
Mm-hmm.
family. And it was so much there. It was so much there. And AB's journey, is interesting, man. He had it bad. He had it rough. And yeah, you see it in the show. You see how, even when they were going to sign their new deal, the label they weren't sure if they wanted AB to be a part of it. And he wanted to. He wanted to be a part of it, and he made sure that he did what he could so that he can become, still be a part of the team. And he just kind of, I think those challenges really just made him. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it really pushed him and it molded him to who he is. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that he always had it in him. I think that his
Mm-hmm.
father challenged him, and I think I give a lot of credit to Abraham Quintanilla because people say, yeah, he was a certain type of father, or he treated his kids a certain way or whatever or whatnot. But that's not what I took from it. I took what I understood was a father who loved his kids and who saw something in them, and he was just trying to pull that out.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he did. They did. So.
Yeah, and you and Ricardo portray that father-son relationship in with so many interesting layers and dynamics. And like you said, with his dad pushing him, it's every single success that they had. His dad's always looking for, well, what else can we do? What's the next step, like that we're all going to take together as a family? How can we push ourselves even further to continue breaking the mold with the music that we're making and with Selena's career? So, how did the two of you work together to kind of just like figure out that really professional dynamic, and how that also feeds into even the quieter moments with them just as a family as well?
Yeah, it was, working with Ricardo was amazing. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he embodied Abraham so good. And we had lots of conversations, offset and things about the family and things that we thought were happening at this moment, or what were they thinking going into this room. And like, you know, um, it was great. It was just great and it was, honestly, I felt it was very easy to work with him because he just understood so well what Abraham was all about. And that that was coming off of him, and I was just receiving everything he was giving me. And I guess it just, it's one of those things where you just you have such good, and that's the entire cast, you know, with everybody. Just good chemistry. It's such good chemistry, and yeah, I mean, you know, it's a very unique story, man. This family, and it was great to be able to share that with Ricardo.
Yeah. And you also do such a great job at kind of showing the pressure that he was really under in a lot of situations, whether it's, okay, you've got to write 3 songs that all need to be hits. You've got to write a song that's going to go platinum, or just you need to find someone new to join the band for tomorrow's show. You know, he was really always shouldering a huge amount of responsibility, you know, not just for himself, but for the band as a whole and for the entire career. How did you want to really kind of capture and portray that through a lot of the scenes where you're kind of like expressing his frustrations and really looking at the specific way in which he manifests that stress and copes with it?
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to the writers. They made it really easy for me to understand what the circumstances were, what the situations were.
Yeah.
And they just understood. They knew really well exactly what these certain moments were all about. You know, there were these moments where, you know, AB. It's funny because I talked to AB a few weeks ago, and he was telling me, he's like, man, like I didn't even realize how much stress I was under, you know? And it's like, dude, like, but that's what it was, you know? He's like, you did such a good job. And but yeah, I think, you know, again, it's crazy, man. Like that it was one of those things that I feel like I just understood. I understood what AB was trying to do. I understood how he wanted to do it, and I understood that he needed to do it. And again, he did.
And I also think it's great that the show explores his becoming a father alongside his relationship to his career, and a career that's incredibly demanding of him in the way that he has to go out on the road. And, you know, we don't often see that portrayed with male characters. And I thought that you put together those scenes in a really great way, because it really escapes from what you would expect of like coming home to the nagging wife being like, oh, you've been off on the road. She's like, no, I believe in you. Like, you can write this song, you can do this. Like, even though you're not going to go play with your kid right now, I understand what you have to do. So how did the two of you work together to really figure out that dynamic and that marriage and what they were like as parents together? Because it's so striking, because you don't necessarily have consecutive scenes together. It's like several months have passed every time that we see the two of them together.
Yeah. Well, Gladys, she's such an amazing actress. She's so good. We had such a good time working together, and you know, I think that we just, again, it's one of those things where like we kind of really understood, and we had plenty of conversations because like you said, there's these big, you know, jumps and time gaps where we don't really know what happened but you know, I think ultimately, like, you know, their relationship was vital to AB, because you know, it was during those times where things were the hardest, you know, where the pressure was enormous. And yeah, it was beautiful to see that she was extremely supportive, and she wanted him to succeed. She wanted the family to succeed, and she understood that. And I think that AB during in the show, I think he was a little bit not shocked, just surprised, I guess, a little bit, that, you know, because he was thinking, man, he's got all these things going on, and then here's his wife that, you know, I'm sure that the thing that he wants to do the most is make her happy and make sure that she feels loved and she's number one, you know, and here she was, you know, just backing him, like, hey, listen, you got this, you know, this is gonna be good, you're gonna be great, and you know, don't think about it, don't stress about it. And it was that, I mean, that was just really beautiful to see that they had that type of relationship with each other.
And how did you think about the shift in him as a character in scenes where he's out on the road once he does become a father, and you know that, you know, his mind is somewhere else a lot of the times, and he's got that responsibility and that love at home, but that he's having to leave behind when he goes out on the road? How did that impact the way that you thought about it in performing those scenes, even when he's not with them?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where it's like you don't really know, you know, what a lot of these people go through when they're on the road, you know, and that to me was eye opening, because I was like, damn, like, you know, all they've ever known was touring. You know, they would tour from city to city, town to town, everywhere. Like, they would just tour, and you know, just thinking about it, it's like, man, like, that must have been rough. That must have been tough to you know, to have your firstborn, and you not really able to see the baby, and you're out here grinding and hustling and working. Um, I just thought, I was like, man, that's not a lot of people are cut out for that kind of life.
Mhm.
And again, credit to them because they were able to accomplish that and have so much success. And it's that's just not an easy thing. I think for many artists or anybody, I think in entertainment, the sports world, like you don't really get to see your family as much. You're out on the road, uh, again, city to city, and we that was really it was really cool to see that. It was really cool to
Mhm.
see that, because we see the glamour, we see the show, we see all the performances, but we don't see the real life. We don't see the human side of these people, and I'm glad that we were able to see that with the show.
Mhm. And to exactly that point that you're making, I really enjoyed the fact that there were numerous scenes throughout the show where we do see those quiet moments on the bus, and it's not necessarily even that every single moment on the bus that something needs to be happening that's really driving the plot forward, but it really just captures, what that day to day would be like. Sometimes they're all talking to each other, and sometimes they're having fun. Sometimes they're just sitting there quietly, just like taking that down space for themselves after a show. So how did you all work together to figure out what those different moments and those different beats would be, and just the different environments that they would create for themselves on the bus depending on where they were at?
Yeah, I think that it's, again, that's one of those things where it's like we have no idea what tour life is like,
Yeah.
and but they're very normal people. They're very
Mhm.
normal. They did normal things, and going to Whataburger, and stealing each other's chips and things like that. Pulling pranks on each other, like, um and I think that we, as a cast, as a group, especially on the days of the performances, or
Mhm.
we were always aware of what was happening, again, before this moment or after this
Mhm.
moment. Like, where did we come from? Oh, we just did this show, and this happened, or the fight just happened. Like,
Mhm.
like, these are things that are constantly, running through our heads, right? And I think we all did such a good job to make sure that everyone was on the same page, to
Mhm.
have these little moments that, like, they're such small moments, but they're huge. I don't know. I feel
Mhm.
like it makes a huge difference into their lives, right?
Mhm.
The way we see their lives. And again, they're human. They're very, very human.
Mhm. And there's moments both on the bus and beyond that where we see AB really just trying to come up with inspiration and working on songwriting. And what were the unique challenges of having to externally try to portray something that is such an internal process that's really difficult to convey? And, it's when people are writing songs, it's not necessarily that they're sitting there moving around a lot. Maybe they're
Yeah.
just sitting quietly at times waiting for inspiration to come. So what were the unique challenges that came with that?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because, when AB, he basically, he blew up in front of
Mhm.
Selena and Chris when they were singing the song, and he was under so much pressure, and, like, he's in his zone. He's
Mhm.
always in his zone, and he's just trying to create. Like, Como La Flor came to him years later, which was crazy, and it's probably one of the most memorable Selena songs that we all know. And uh and I'm sure he wrote other tons of songs where he was all in, locked in, and this one just kind of came to him. So, it was just very, I don't know, it was very, every situation, every song was different. The process of making them was different. And um but you do see the evolution of the music, of
Mhm.
AB's writing, and his creativeness. um and yeah, I mean, it's I think once he got to a place where he felt, I guess, secure. I
Mhm.
think that, that's when things really just kind of, like, it was definitely a transition. But the thing is, I think I think we talked about this. I think when he was under the most pressure is when he delivered the most. So, but yeah, I think, it was really nice to see that.
Yeah. I also imagine that, you know, doing something like songwriting really influences the way that you look at everything in the world, because, and we see this through a lot of the moments that you portray on screen, it really impacts his lens and the way that he's looking around for inspiration and paying attention to people in a very different way, because he never knows where inspiration may strike. So how did you think about the way that he really uniquely looked at the world and would have just been observing everything around him in that way?
You see that's tough because you know he's such a musical
Yeah.
genius. Like I just like even when when he goes to the bar to listen to the new music
Mhm.
that they're playing, and that's just stuff that comes from geniuses, you know, like musical geniuses. Like he sees the colors and he's listening, he's isolating each sound. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm a fan of music, you know, I do music, but I could never like I could just never think how detailed and how every sound has to be to a certain level and mixed at a certain way. And like,
Mhm.
you know, it's just such a crazy um art masterpiece that he creates in his mind, in his head.
Yeah.
And and you know, we could, I don't know, I mean, I think that there's room to explore that.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that ultimately, like, again, he's just it's he was just such a again, he was just such a musical genius that
Mhm.
it wasn't, I could never fathom how these things really came together for him, you know. And again, it's funny because
Yeah.
some of them were very um you know, very detailed or very complex, and then others were just kind of like boom, it just came in and it took off. And like that's, and I've heard this plenty of times from other artists. They'll say, oh, you know, I did this song but I never even cared about it. It was one of those throwaway songs, and next thing you know,
Mhm.
that's the one that took off and is their number one hit, you know. So it's just, it's a crazy world.
The series also has a lot of discourse and conversation around just the authenticity that was so vital and so important to all of them, that really was instilled in them from childhood from their dad. That was like, okay, like, yes, there's a record deal on the table, but we're not going to sign immediately because these are the other things that are important to us beyond the money. And he obviously really instilled that into AB and into Selena and, you know, into his kids as a whole. So how did that impact certain choices that you made, just knowing that that was a really core part of his values and his own personal beliefs as well?
I think that was probably one of the most inspiring things of the entire story, was the fact that Abraham, um, the creative control was important. It was important. It was super important because, you know, especially during those times where the labels kind of control everything and they want to mold you to us to what they think is what, you know, what you are as an artist to them. And you see it in the show, the way they approach Selena with her photo shoot and all that stuff. Um, you know, that was one of the things that I really was like, man, that's crazy, because Abraham just knew. He's like, no, this is not, I know what our sound is. I know what I
Mhm.
want for this family and us as performers, as entertainers, as musicians, as a band. And he you know, he made sure that everyone was taken care of. And at the end of the day, they weren't gonna, you know, they weren't gonna make any decisions
Mhm.
without making sure that they were in, you know, in a place where they felt comfortable and have that creative control.
Mhm.
And I think they all understood that. AB, Suzette, um, and Selena, of course, like they knew, like, we can't, you know, we're not going to make these decisions because, you know, you see when Selena fights for AB, you know, he's my
Mhm.
producer, like he's the, you know, and yeah, you know, there's the politics of whatever, you know, that goes on in the labels, um, but again, AB showed up. You know, he showed up, and Abraham had full confidence in his son that he would deliver. And even though again AB was under so much pressure and at times looked like he was going to crumble, but no, he kept getting up and he kept delivering.
Yeah. And you were just mentioning the photo shoot with Selena, where, you know, they're really trying to make her into a version of herself that isn't authentic to who she is. And, you know, we see the marketing people keep describing it as it's a world album. And, you know, the pushback from the family being like, but what does that even mean? And there's a lot of shifts that have happened in the music industry since. Like, we don't see a world music section, thankfully, when we go to a record store anymore. So what was your journey of just kind of researching and thinking back to what the specifics of the music industry were at that particular moment in time?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about how music has evolved throughout the
Mhm.
years. Like, and during those times, again, it's like you sign a label, you sign in a way pretty much everything,
Yeah.
whatever the deal is, whatever they're giving you, upfront money, whatever backhand deal, whatever. But music, I mean, during those times, I'm sure it must have been, well, in the show, you see it, it must have been
Mhm.
just very, very tough, very, very tough. Um, and it's crazy because now the way music is, it's like you have so many independent artists that come out of nowhere and like,
Yeah.
SoundCloud, of YouTube, of like,
Mhm.
which I think is great. I think the way music has evolved has been great. But yeah, I think, the research that I did about how things were running during those times was just like, um, it was crazy. Like, but but still credit to a lot of the labels because they made a lot of superstars. Like one of the things that I liked the most was when Jose Bahar tells Abraham like we have to drop the Los Dinos, and he's like, he starts giving examples of like, Whitney, these people, and he's like, they all have more names, or like, he's like, you don't want to hear, Selena Los Dinos and like into this audience, they're not, it's just not going to be received the same, so a part of a lot of them knew what they were doing, and like obviously Jose Behar did, um yeah, I just think that I think that that's always been the challenge, is the creative control,
Yeah.
um and I think that it especially during those times, it might have been hit or miss. Like, oh,
Mhm.
we. I mean, I can only imagine if the label, if Abraham would have let the label take control of Celine's career, like, would we have the
Mhm.
same? Hey, probably not.
Yeah.
So, um, so I'm sure it just must have been a whole, vigorous process during those times.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the live music performances that you all put together on stage throughout the series, because there's so many of them, and you really kind of find a unique way to like bring her voice to screen in each of those performances. Stylistically, they're very different. They show like the evolution of the band as they became more confident, as they worked together, as their style evolved as musicians. And I know that you had never learned an instrument before and learned to pick up the bass for this, and you were all performing against the backdrop of Selena's actual music. So what was that journey of not just really understanding the instrument and the intimacy in which you were holding it and moving with it as if you'd been doing that your whole life, but also just then really specifically crafting that into the music of Selena, and even just like the minutia of the choreography that was needed for those moments?
Yeah, that was to me probably the most fun, like, part about the entire production was the performances. Like,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I didn't know. I'd never picked up an instrument, so I didn't. When they gave me the bass, it was so weird to me. I was like, man, like, it's just, how do you even hold this thing, and the weight of it, the balance of it. It's like, how do you get, how does he play, dance, and still out there, orchestrating the entire thing, like, um but as with we practiced a lot. We had a lot of rehearsals, um and the more I would get comfortable with it, the more you just become one with it. Um I mean, the performances were amazing. They were the energy. Like, I remember when we did Como La Flor for the first time,
Mhm.
um I cried, like, because it was a build up to that moment, to shoot on that shoot day, because we had, it was all these things that we were doing, we were shooting, and this was the first time we were gonna shoot Como La Flor, and it was months, weeks, or like, before that moment had happened, that was coming, and the preparation for it was I remember, was just, it was Como La Flor, like, this is the big one, like, this is one of the big ones. Um and I remember that first take, was everyone was crying, like, because it was just such a moment of I don't know. It was just so magical. It was magical. The energy, the vibe, the importance of it, the build up to it. Like, it was just all these things. And I remember just crying. I was like, damn, I can only imagine what
Yeah.
Selena and Los Dinos, they were experiencing during these performances.
Mhm.
Having
And
fun.
what are you proudest of in terms of your portrayal of AB and your work on the series overall?
Um, I want to say I think what I'm most proud about is the fact that the family is super happy with the show. That to me was so important, because we telling the story about them, and it just, once I heard that they watched the show and they really loved it, and I got to talk to AB, and he was like, man, you know, you did such a good job, and everyone did such a good job. Like, that to me was super fulfilling, because I felt like, you know, we honored Selena, we honored her, and I think they said that as well, you know. And it's like that's the ultimate for us, because it's like, you know, we could shoot scenes all day long, but this was different. You know, this is very, very different, and that's what I'm most proudest of, is knowing that the family were very happy and proud of what we did, telling their story.
That's so beautiful to hear, and congratulations on all of your work on the show. And thank you so much for talking with us this afternoon about it.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.